Good morning, Year 3, and welcome to today's reading. We have reached the end of the reading week. We've still got one more day of school, but it is the end of the reading week because this is the last reading lesson of the week. And we're going to be answering the big question today. So let me share my screen with you so you can get started with your starter activity. Before we get on to that big question, your starter activity is for you at home or in school to read through the reading text, and once you've read through it, you're going to place the events in order. Okay, so I'm going to read the events to you. The toothpaste was squeezed into a long worm. The can of deodorant spray was put into the saucepan. George's grandma asked him what he was doing in the kitchen. George emptied the shampoo into the pan. George went to the bathroom. Unfortunately, somehow, I don't know how it's happened, but these have all been jumbled up, and I need your help to help put them in chronological order, the order in which they happened. So can you read through the text of George's Marvellous Medicine, chapter 3, pages 14 to 18, and then can you order these sentences, these events, in the correct order? Pause the video so that you can do that now. Thank you. Okay, great. By now, you should have completed that activity, and I can now reveal the answers to you so you can check if you are right. So, first thing that happened is George's grandma asked him what he was doing in the kitchen. Then George went to the bathroom. Whilst he was in the bathroom, he grabbed and emptied a bottle of Golden Gloss shampoo. And then he squeezed the toothpaste into a long, long worm. And then he found a can of aerosol deodorant, Nevermore Ponging spray, which he said grandma could use plenty of because he thought that she smelt, and he put it into the saucepan. So that is the answer. It should be 4, 5, 1, 3, 2. Okay, so double check those with the answer that you've done at home, and if you need to make any corrections, then do so. Okay, moving on to the big question. The big question this week is, should George have been making his marvellous medicine? So should George have been making his marvellous medicine? What do you think? Pause the video now so you can answer that question. Okay, so we've come up with ideas on both sides to support that George should have been making his marvellous medicine or that George shouldn't have been making his marvellous medicine. So let's explore some of these ideas. Well, remember, our ideas have to be rooted in the text. So I can't just be making up ideas saying, oh no, George shouldn't have made it because it would have been harmful to grandma. Where in the text does it say that? Every answer you come up with, you must have evidence, which means quotes, exact writing from the text which backs up your point. So for here, it says George should have been making his marvellous medicine because it was unique. Nobody had ever made a medicine like that before. That's what it says in the text. So all my answers I've got in the text. So in that way, you could say George should have been making his marvellous medicine because it was unique and it was special. It was one of a kind medicine. So it will be interesting to see what it does. As we know, nobody has made a medicine like that before. On the other hand, George shouldn't have been making his marvellous medicine because it involved him lying to his grandma, which is not very good for you to lie to people. When she asked him what he was doing, he said, I'm just tidying the kitchen. But that was false. That wasn't what he was doing. He was getting a pot, a big stewing pot, so he could put all the different ingredients of the medicine inside. So we have to think about that. On the other hand, if we go back to George should have been making his marvellous medicine, well, in the text it says that the medicine would produce some exciting results. So, you know, this is what scientists do today. I was about to say we, I'm not a scientist, but scientists combine chemicals together and see what results they can produce from that, if that could be something that could cure somebody. And George was simply doing the same thing, although he may not have been using the same chemicals that scientists would use, and he may not have researched his experiment beforehand. It could potentially still produce some exciting results. And I've used evidence from the text. This is a quote that I found in the text where it says that. Now, let's explore another perspective, that George should have been making his marvellous medicine. Although he said that it would produce some exciting results, it also said in the text that he didn't have the faintest idea what some of the ingredients did to you. He didn't know whether it would cure grandma or knock her sideways. He actually says that in the text. So that sounds like something that could be very, very dangerous, not actually knowing what the consequences or what the side effects are of this medicine. He's just mixing it all together and hoping for the best. And we can't do that because, you know, something could go very, very wrong. He could hurt somebody whilst he's doing this. Let's go back to George should have been making his marvellous medicine. Well, it says he stayed far away from the forbidden medicine cupboard. You know, his parents, he'd made a very solemn promise to his parents never to go near the cupboard because there were things in there that could kill somebody. So although we said it is dangerous, him mixing the ingredients together, it's not like he would actually kill grandma because he was staying away from the forbidden medicine cupboard. But nonetheless, there would be no wondering whether the particular thing would knock the old girl sideways. That's what it says in the text. And if it's knocking the old girl sideways, it might potentially be knocking her out, making her unconscious, which is not very good. That's not what you want to do to somebody because that is harming them. Okay, so hopefully if you can at home add some more points onto that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take these points that I've done and I'm going to turn it into a big question. Before I do, I've got to choose which side do I agree with. So remember, you don't need to copy me at home. I'm just modelling it to show you what I would do. Should George have been making his marvellous medicine or shouldn't he? I feel like I agree that George shouldn't have been making his marvellous medicine. And so I am going to base my big question off of that. And I'm going to use quotes from the text like I've done here to write up my answer. So here are my steps to success. The first thing you need to do is identify your point of view. So my point of view is that George shouldn't have been making his marvellous medicine. And then I've got to find evidence in the text to support my answer. And then I've got to explain my point, which is what I am going to do now. So let me just get my camera ready. Okay, and let's share my screen. So I'm just going to reshare my screen with you. There we go. Should George, and I've already written out the title, should George have been making his marvellous medicine? And what I'm also going to do is just put my steps to success here as well so that you can see that. It's got a bit rumpled. Apologies. But I'm going to keep it there just so that I can keep track of what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, so first thing I've got to do is find points to support my argument. Well, I've done that already, and I'm going to identify my points. So first thing, as you're starting off, you should start off with an introductory statement saying, I believe that George should have been making his marvellous medicine, or that George should not have been making his marvellous medicine. I think that George should not have been making his marvellous medicine, so I'm going to put that into a sentence. So I'm going to start off by saying, I am of the opinion that George, with a capital G, George, neat handwriting, joined up please. And I'm going to leave a line just in case I make a mistake. George should not have been making his marvellous medicine. And that's my first opening statement. I'm of the opinion that George should not have been making his marvellous medicine. Fantastic. Now, still looking at this, I'm going to keep that there for you. Make sure that's focused. And what I'm going to do now, sorry, let me just move this out of the way slightly. Actually, if I put that there and then you can keep tabs of it, that might be better. Now I'm going to move on to my actual paragraphs. So first thing I've got to do is I've got to give a point Once I've said my point, I'm going to use evidence from the text, which means I need to actually get quotes from the text to support my answer. And then I'm going to explain my point in more detail. So I'm going to say, I'm going to leave a line. I believe, and you see how I'm using a different sentence starter than one that I've already done. I've already said I'm of the opinion that, so I don't want to use that again. I want to keep changing it. I believe that George should have avoided making the medicine because it led him to be dishonest. Full stop. Dot my I's. I believe that George should have avoided making the medicine because it led him to be dishonest. Now, I'm not going to stop there. The next thing I have to do, remember, is I've got to use evidence from the text. So now I've got to go to the text and find what quotes, where does it show that he was being dishonest and who was he being dishonest to? So I'm going to say, in the text, I shouldn't have taken my pen off there, I should have let it dry. So in the text, he lies to grandma. I'm going to do a capital G, comma, by telling her that he was tidying, and I'm going to do quote marks here because I'm copying it from the text, tidying the kitchen. Which was false and I'm going to say deceitful. Okay. So that's my first paragraph. I'm just going to read it back to myself. I believe that George should have avoided making the medicine because it led him to be dishonest. In the text, he lies to grandma by telling her that he was tidying the kitchen, which was false and deceitful. I'm going to do one more paragraph just to show you, and then I am going to end it with a closing off statement. So let's just go back. Okay, so I need to choose a different sentence starter now, and this time I'm going to use furthermore. So furthermore, comma, after you use that word, George was adding, and I don't have enough space to write ingredients there, so I'm just going to go into the next line. Remember, still leaving spaces. Ingredients to the medicine, comma, that could have potentially So furthermore, George was adding ingredients, put to my eye there, so I'm going to go back, ingredients to the medicine that could have potentially harmed grandma. I'm going to say, again, now that I've done my point, I've got to use evidence from the text to support my answer. So I've got to now find evidence in the text to support my answer. So it's not enough for me to just say George was adding ingredients to the medicine that could have potentially harmed grandma. Where does it show me that? So I'm going to say the text details that George didn't have the faintest idea. So I'm going to put here the, again, quote marks, faintest idea what some of the ingredients so the text details that George didn't have the faintest idea what some of the ingredients did to you. Now here I'm going to also put a counterpoint, and I'm going to say, although, and I'm actually going to use one of the other side of the argument to support my argument. So I'm actually going to say, although it would produce some exciting, the medicine could produce some exciting results. So, and then I'm going to come back and make my argument even stronger. So I'm going to say, although the medicine could have produced some, and this is a direct quote from the text, some exciting results, and it says this on page 14 or 15. It may very well, I'm going to again do quote marks, it may very well knock the girl sideways, which would be knocking her out or knocking her unconscious. Knock the old girl sideways. This side effect sounds extremely, and I'm using quite strong language here, emotive language, dangerous and reckless. And the last thing that I would need to do is simply write my conclusion. Overall, I think that making the marvelous medicine was a bad idea, with potentially catastrophic results. So I'm just going to write that last bit. So overall, let me move it up so you can see, comma, I think that, oopsie daisy, that wasn't very neat, but I'm just going to carry on. Making the, I'm going to go on to the next page now. Marvelous medicine was a bad idea, comma, with potentially, oh dear, my tummy's rumbling, very hungry, catastrophic, again, emotive language, because I'm trying to convince my readers that I am correct and this point of view is correct, potentially catastrophic results. Full stop. And all that's left to do is just to read that back to you. So you can see your big question should be quite detailed. Should George have been making his marvellous medicine? I am of the opinion that George should not have been making his marvellous medicine. I believe that George should have avoided making the medicine because it led him to be dishonest. In the text, he lies to Grandma by telling her that he was tidying the kitchen, which was false and deceitful. Furthermore, George was adding ingredients to the medicine that could have potentially harmed Grandma. The text details that George didn't have the faintest idea what some of the ingredients did to you. Although the medicine could have produced some exciting results, it may very well knock the old girl sideways. This side effect sounds extremely dangerous and reckless. Overall, I think that making the marvellous medicine was a bad idea with potentially catastrophic results. Okay, so that is my example of the big question done for you. Let me go back and stop sharing. That is my example done for you. Please make sure that you find a point, you get examples and evidence from the text to support your answer, and then you explain it in more detail. Okay, so I want at least 2 points explained with an intro, a very short sentence for your introduction, a very short sentence for your conclusion. And that is all. Then you can upload it onto Seesaw. You can upload the text of you writing it, or you can upload a video of you reading what you've written down as well. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. Good luck, and I will see you all in the next video, which will be next week's reading video. Okay, so bye, Year 3.